Appropriations. Ms. Childress, would you please take the roll?
Representative Alleman?
Excused.
Representative Angelos?
Here.
Representative Haroldson?
Excused.
Representative Pendergraft?
Here.
Representative Sherwood?
Here.
Representative Smith?
Here.
Chairman Bear?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to hear 4 bills today, and I have changed the order up from what was on the announcement, just so everyone knows. We're going to start with House Bill 264, Digital Bank, Central Bank, Digital Currencies Prohibitions. And right now we have Representative Singh here, Vice Chairman Singh, to present the bill. Vice Chair Singh, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Good Appropriations Committee. I'm here before you today not just to discuss House Bill 264, but to defend the fundamental principle of financial sovereignty, the right of individuals to control their own money without undue interference from government bureaucrats or central planners. The rapid development of central bank digital currencies represents one of the greatest threats to personal financial autonomy in our time. While some argue that CBDCs are necessary innovation, promising efficiency and modernization, I ask at what cost? Across the world, governments are rushing to implement CBDCs. In 2020, only 35 countries were exploring the concept. Today, that number has surged to over 114 nations, covering 95% of the global GDP. This is not a mere hypothetical. This is an active and coordinated movement towards centralized financial control. In China, the digital yuan is already being tested in mass rollouts. The G7 nations, including the United States, are in advanced development phases, and nearly every G20 country has invested significant time and resources into bringing CBDCs into life. However, what is often left out of the conversation is that a CBDC is not just another form of digital currency. It is an entirely new financial control system. Unlike Bitcoin, which is decentralized and operates outside government control, a CBDC is the exact opposite. It is a government-controlled, centrally managed digital currency where every transaction is monitored, recorded, and ultimately controlled. The key difference is this: Bitcoin empowers individuals, CBDCs empower governments. We must ask ourselves a critical question. Do we trust the government to dictate how, where, and when we spend our money? A fully implemented CBDC would mean total financial surveillance. Every purchase would be tracked in real time. Every transaction would be subject to government oversight and potential intervention. Imagine if the federal government could decide that you've spent too much on gas this month and block your next fuel purchase. Imagine if donations to a political cause was deemed unacceptable and resulted in frozen accounts. Imagine if someone's ability to purchase goods depended on whether their social, political, or economic behavior aligned with government expectations. This is not paranoia. It is a reality that is already playing out in countries experimenting with CBDCs. The ability to program money means that financial institutions could be forced to limit transactions, control consumer behavior, and even punish dissent. This is no longer a world where you control your money. It's a world where your money controls you. Some argue that CBDCs will increase payment efficiency, complement existing financial services, and deter criminal activity. But these theoretical benefits come with enormous risks. A government-controlled digital currency could dismantle our current financial system, create instability, weaken monetary policy, and even expose every transaction to cybersecurity threats. But above all, the most dangerous consequence is the complete loss of financial privacy. Think about this in personal terms. If I asked you to submit your last 90 days of bank statements before I even considered hiring you, you'd likely be offended. You would say, "Who are you to ask me that?" And you'd be right. But this is exactly what a CBDC would allow: complete financial tracking of every single citizen. Governments would have the power to analyze spending patterns, track political contributions, and even manipulate financial incentives based on ideological preferences. And this leads us to the undeniable truth. CBDCs are not about modernization. They are about control. They are backed by big banks, central governments, and global institutions that thrive on centralized economic power. And who stands against them? Entrepreneurs, free thinkers, small business owners, and any individual who values their financial autonomy. That is why House Bill 264 is essential. This bill ensures that Wyoming will not participate in this encroaching system of financial authoritarianism. It prohibits state agencies from accepting CBDCs as payments, ensures that no taxpayer dollars are spent to implement or support CBDC infrastructure, and sends a clear message to Congress that Wyoming rejects the idea of a centrally controlled digital currency. The people of Wyoming have always valued independence and financial freedom. We were one of the first states to embrace cryptocurrency-friendly regulations, private banking protections, and decentralization of financial services. If we allow CBDC to take hold, we would be handing over the keys of our financial independence. Make no mistake, the decision we make today will determine whether future generations inherit a world where individuals control their money or a world where money controls them. We have seen time and time again when government overreach goes unchecked, it never stops. Whether it was the Patriot Act expending mass surveillance or the COVID emergency powers leading to economic shutdowns, history has shown that once governments take power, they rarely give it back. Now we are being told that CBDCs are simply another tool in the financial system. But I ask again, when has giving the government more control over people's lives ever resulted in more freedom? When has mass surveillance ever remained limited? When has centralization ever benefited the individual? The answer is simple: never. Wyoming has an opportunity today to lead. We have the chance to draw a line in the sand and say no to this financial overreach. That is why I urge every member of this committee to support House Bill 264. Let's stand firm in our commitment to financial freedom, privacy, and economic sovereignty. Let's send a message that Wyoming will not comply with centralized economic control, and let's ensure that our people will never be forced to participate in a system that tracks, controls, and dictates their financial choices. I appreciate your time and consideration, and I urge you to pass House Bill 264.
Thank you, Representative Singh. You had me at hello, so we'll go on. Any questions for Representative Singh? I have one quick question here. On page 2, line 10 through 12, I think this is the crux of the bill, is limiting our state agencies from assisting in the implementation of a CBDC. Do you see, especially in your position on the blockchain committee, any issues with this when it comes to our own state-sponsored stable token?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I do not see this conflicting with our current stable token project that we have going on right now. The stable token is not a central bank digital currency. It is a token which is different from a cryptocurrency in and of itself, or from an issued currency from itself. So this would specifically apply to a digital currency issued by the Federal Reserve. And because the Federal Reserve has not adopted a digital form of the dollar to issue to individual citizens, it remains a states' right issue. And so I think it's essential that we take a stand here right now as the states to prevent the Federal Reserve from doing something like this. And just to circle it back home, no, I don't think that this will interfere with our ability to issue a token in and of itself.
I have a follow-up for you. So I understand the sentiment of this bill and appreciate it. I've signed on as a co-sponsor. And it is correct for us to assert our 10th and 9th Amendment rights as a state against the federal government doing these types of things. But the next question is, are we doing the same thing when we introduce freeze and seize in our own digital currency via the stable token?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, by issuing freeze and seize, I'm not going to debate the merits of the Wyoming stable token in this bill. I think that's a different bill, and we would be able to address those issues. However, the stable token is an entirely voluntary token to participate in, as compared to the issuing of a central bank digital currency. That would involve the conversion of every citizen's dollars into a cryptocurrency under the complete control of the federal government. And so the difference then is between the voluntary nature of participating in a stable token issued by the state of Wyoming and the involuntary nature of having your property converted into a digital asset without your consent.
Well said. Thank you. Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the bringer of the bill for being with us this afternoon. Are you aware of other kinds of payments, forms of payments that we as a state say, we don't accept this, we don't recognize or accept? So would there be a list beyond just the central digital currency, or are there other things that we should be aware of? Thank you.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Sherwood. So right now, we're not able to pay our bills in any other form of cryptocurrency. We're not able to pay our bills in gold or silver, anything like that. We're only able to use federally issued tender, right, the dollar. And so this would prohibit the creation of some sort of digital dollars, a placeholder for the dollar itself. But as far as the way that we're able to pay our bills, no, we're only able to use dollars and cents.
Representative Singh, just to follow up on that question, I don't think this bill actually prohibits people from using any particular type of currency. It only prohibits the state from assisting with the implementation of a CBDC. Would that be an accurate statement?
Chairman Bear, yes, that's absolutely correct.
Further questions for the bringer? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up public comment, and I'll start with legislators or other electeds. Representative Webb, would you like to speak on this? Okay, any others here? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Is there any public comment? Ms. Childress, do we have anyone online on this? All right, and now agencies. Is there any agencies that, not agencies, should have covered those first. Do we have any agencies? None. Do we have any associations or lobbying firms who would like to speak to this? Okay, we're going to have to get softer chairs in here because people are just not showing up to talk about these bills. Representative Singh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just some final thoughts for you guys. We are not the first state to issue some sort of ban on central bank digital currencies. On the East Coast, the West Coast, there are states considering similar policies in taking a stand in preventing the Federal Reserve from adopting this particular policy. And right now, it remains in the state's hands to take responsibility for this. And so I think if we join hands with the other states that are taking a stand on this issue, we will really be able to dictate the financial policy of our government for generations to come.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Representative Singh. Any further comments? All right, we're going to close public comment, and committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill do pass.
Move the bill do pass. Seconded by Representative Harrelson. All right, we'll work the bill. Page 1. Any changes or motions? Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Any comments or discussion on the bill? Seeing none, Ms. Childers, would you please take the roll?
Roll call vote on House Bill 264 do pass. Representative Allemand excused. Representative Angelos? Aye. Representative Harrelson?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood?
No.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 5 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
Thank you. That is a bill that will go to the floor now, and Representative Singh, I hope you will manage that on the floor and do a great job for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, now we're moving on to House Bill 165, Ranked Choice Voting Prohibition. Representative Webb, would you please come forward and present the bill? Welcome to House Appropriations. It really is the best committee, even though people don't like to come up here.
I'm not going to argue with you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good idea. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the Appropriations Committee, for letting me present House Bill 165. My name is Joe Webb. I represent House District 19. The bill concerns prohibiting ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting allows voters to rank their choice for candidates running for office in order of their preference. For instance, if 10 candidates are running for office, voters can rank their choice of candidates in order from highest to lowest, or 1 through 10. Over the years, we, as voters, have been tasked with the decision to decide who is the candidate that is going to be elected to office, candidate A or candidate B. Ranked choice voting can lead to less desirable candidates being elected, as the second, third, and fourth choices are added to the total number of each candidate's first place votes until one candidate finally wins or is finally declared the winner by majority. Currently, only Maine and Alaska allow ranked choice voting in statewide elections. I believe that 5 states allow it in municipal elections, and 10 states have banned ranked choice voting statewide, including our neighbors Idaho, Montana, and South Dakota. In this bill, Statute 22-117 is amended to say, "Nothing in this election code shall be deemed to authorize any election in Wyoming to be conducted through ranked choice voting. Any existing or future ordinance enacted or adopted by a county, municipality, or any other governmental entity that purports to authorize ranked choice voting in violation of this subsection is void." As used in this subsection, ranked choice voting means a voting method that allows voters to rank candidates for an office in order of preference, and has ballots cast to be tabulated in multiple rounds following the elimination of a candidate until the candidate or candidates with the most votes are declared winners, or any other system that allows a voter to vote for more than the number of candidates permitted to fill a particular office. Additionally, Wyoming Statute 22-6120 is amended to read, "Adjacent to the description of any office," and this is the amended part now, "shall be printed, vote for one, or if the office is," that's the end of the addition, to be filled by more than one candidate, shall be printed, vote for not more than," and then the appropriate words and figures designating the proper number to be elected. It's a pretty simple bill. Pretty straightforward, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Representative Webb. Any questions for the bringer of the bill? Go ahead, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Webb. Welcome again to Appropriations. Are you aware of, at this time, are there any existing ordinances in place in Wyoming that allow for this style of voting?
I am not,
Through the chair, please, Representative Webb. Go ahead.
thank you. Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood, I am not aware of any current municipality or county ordinances or that would allow that kind of stuff.
Follow up? All right. Representative Webb, thank you. Mr. Secretary, are you here to speak on this bill?
Yes.
Please come forward.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand in complete, or I guess sit in complete and full support of this bill, House Bill 165, ranked choice voting prohibition. Appreciate Representative Webb bringing this bill. Have testified extensively against measures to institute ranked choice voting in Wyoming, including legislation considered during the 2023 legislative session, which was House Bill 49, Municipal Nonpartisan Ranked Choice Voting in Elections, which was actually sponsored by the Joint Corporations Committee. And that bill did die in committee during the 2023 legislative session. And this bill is a proactive measure to take a firm policy stance against ranked choice voting, and I think that is not only appropriate but necessary to the welfare of elections in our state. Ranked choice voting is a system in which voters rank candidates on their ballots. If no candidate attains more than 50% of the first choice vote, then the candidate with the fewest first choice votes is disqualified. The votes are tabulated again, and their voter's second choice picks up those votes. This process continues until one candidate receives a fabricated majority of the vote. The process has been rejected in a number of states because of its confusing nature. And the problems imposed by ranked choice voting extend beyond mere confusion and lead to several concerning outcomes which Wyoming should avoid. For example, should a voter fail or choose not to rank a candidate beyond their first choice, their ballot will be thrown out altogether through later tabulations. This phenomenon is called ballot exhaustion and is unique to ranked choice voting. And as a result, ranked choice voting may lead to a candidate attaining an artificial majority, quote unquote, definitely put that in square quotes, of votes, even when they did not receive the highest amount of first choice votes in the first round. And this is exactly the case in states and other political subdivisions that ranked choice voting has been implemented in, and has resulted in a number of poorly executed ranked choice voting implementations. This is why I believe we need to make a strong policy stance and move the direction of not only permissive silence on the issue of ranked choice voting, but join the other states in outright banning ranked choice voting in Wyoming. And this is really modeled off of Florida, which has the strongest ranked choice voting ban. And we'll join Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oklahoma in taking affirmative action to ban ranked choice voting altogether. So I'm very supportive of this bill. This bill does have an interesting provision at the end of page 2 and top of page 3, which provides direction on the ballot, on further direction in state law on how many votes should be cast in a race. I'm certainly for this clarity, I think. It's kind of interesting tacking it on to the ban on ranked choice voting bill, but you know, it complies with single subject, and I think it's just kind of a belt and suspenders sort of way of us further codifying on the ballot itself what we're effectuating in the meat of the bill. So just want to alert you to that very interesting provision on the bottom of page 2 in 22-6-120, but just very supportive of this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Questions for the Secretary? All right. Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate your opining. Representative Nicholas, I failed to call on you earlier in the previous bill. Would you like to opine on this? All right. Representative Webb, I failed to tell you to stick around. We will want to chat later about this bill. All right. Do I have any public that would like to speak on this bill? No public. I do believe we have someone from a county government online. Ms. Childress, would you please let Ms. Rimmer in on the Zoom, please?
Here we There we go. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome to House Appropriations. We appreciate you being
Great.
here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate just a moment to speak, Mr. Chairman. I just had a couple of points. Not in opposition or favor of the bill, just wanted to give you a little bit of information on House Bill 165, which basically is that right now, the way the equipment works, we can, and Secretary of State could attest to this too, we can program our equipment to do a rank choice vote election, but we could use our regular ballots and we could tabulate the results. But in order to get that algorithm for ranked choice voting to show who was the winner, we would actually have to pull our results and use a third-party vendor to provide that algorithm. that isn't certified with the election equipment that we have. So we're not able to do a ranked choice vote without using a third-party system. And basically, the certification is required. That's Wyoming Statute 2211-103 D and E. And so there would also be a requirement of the Secretary of State to allow that to occur. So I just wanted to give you that bit of information that there's some, I guess, some parameters for it that exist already. And apparently there's also been complaints about how long it takes to get results with ranked choice voting because it is pretty complex. And that was all. I just wanted to offer that information, Mr. Chairman, and I would stand for any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Rimmer. Can you tell me, what is your position there at the county?
Oh, I apologize. I'm the county clerk in Commerce County.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Chairman.
Appreciate that. I have a quick question for you. It seems to be that there's a lot of interest in voting machines, and from your testimony, it sounds like we would be, again, adding another layer of machine work to create the outcome for this. And I have seen both testimony here, and I've seen it in other states where they have engaged in this, that it's a lengthy process and it adds a lot of time. Is that what you're pointing out by this adding of a third party would indicate more time and more processing?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is an accurate statement. It would require extra steps for us. That's not to say it couldn't be done, but we'd have to engage with a third party open source software, something in order to get that algorithm for the ranked choice voting so we'd know who is the winner and then go on down the line, and it would take longer. Absolutely.
Thank you, Clerk
Thank you.
Rimmer. Is there any questions for Clerk Rimmer? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for being
Yep.
here. We appreciate your input.
Thank you very much.
All right, Ms. Simmons, thank you for being here. Appreciate you getting right up here to the mic. Please proceed.
Gail Simmons, Civics 307. Wow, that's loud. And why
we
vote?
like it, though.
I'll whisper. On and against, but not for the reason you probably think, Mr. Chairman. Despite the false claims made against me in the primary election, I do not believe ranked choice voting is appropriate for Wyoming. Ranked choice voting, or RCV, is actually very common in our personal lives. Every time you make a decision through the process of elimination, you are mimicking the underlying theory. Also known as instant runoff, the process acts as a forcing mechanism for results by majority rather than plurality. This is only a factor when there are more than 2 candidates for a single seat. In the 2024 primary, only 3 Republican Senate seats out of 15 and 6 Republican House races out of 63 had 3 or more candidates. There were 0 in the general election. Much more common are uncontested races. In the primary, there were 4 House Republican and 17 Senate Republican races. In the general election, 13 of the 15 were uncontested for Senate district and 48 of 63 in House districts. There is no point in making major changes to our elections for only 6% of legislative races alone. Implementing RCV, as you heard from the clerk, would require software updates to the tabulators, and that is not currently an available option through ES&S, or it would require a third party, which would mean an exception to existing statutes and rules. Except for special districts, all elections in the state are administered by the county clerks within existing election processes and equipment. Municipalities would have to conduct their elections separately and administer themselves, which would be very costly and not likely. The bottom line is RCV cannot be implemented in Wyoming unless the legislature passes a bill to do so. This bill proposes to have the legislature prohibit a voting process that does not and cannot exist without their own action anyway. The bill serves no purpose. I stand for questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Simmons, thank you for being here. So if ENS were to come up with that software, and it would be something that would be kind of in that suite of, that we already have with them, would that shift or change that outcome? Or obviously, I know we need legislative action to go to a third party option, but could you talk to me about if our current software systems, current equipment systems were to cover this, what that would look like?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Representative Harrelson, no, it would not. I think the more pressing or more important reason why this body would never, I believe, pass a bill allowing RCV. So you don't have to prohibit something that you would have to take action on to allow is the bigger issue for me. But more specifically, the only good reason to hold RCV is if you have an abundance of multiple races where there are multiple candidates, and again, to have a majority instead of plurality. We are so far away from that, and I can't ever see it change, that it would not make any difference. It's just another added burden over and above the fact that logically it makes no sense.
Further questions for Ms. Simmons? Okay, I do tend to agree with you that this is not necessary for the sake of changing law. I'll give you that point. But I think it sends a pretty good message. And the reason I think it's an important message is it was either 2 or 3 years ago that our own corporations committee was introducing ranked choice voting for political subdivisions. And I do recall that. So, I think it just sends a message to future legislatures that, this legislature, the 68th, thinks that this is the wrong way to go. So I find value in
Yeah.
that. But go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, a couple things on that. First, I'm not sure that it is appropriate or constitutional to pass legislation intended to influence future legislators. That seems a little strange. But I also have, from a policy perspective, passing statutes that are solely to send a message. I think that statutes should be for policy, not for messaging.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. I would say this is a policy, but it doesn't hold a lot of water. Let's say that. I'll agree with you on that.
Exactly.
But it does send that message. And I think the words you were looking for is that one legislature can't bind another legislature to something. And this
Thank
certainly,
you.
as you've pointed out, would not bind them because they could reverse this in the future.
And also, I would point out that that bill that was sponsored by corporations didn't pass
Fair enough. Very
for
well.
these reasons.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Appreciate your input. Mr. Moline, thank you for coming forward. Welcome to House Appropriations. We always appreciate having you here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe this is my first time in front of this esteemed body. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, sitting in favor of this bill. This fits my members' policy against ranked choice voting. So many times with our laws, we're reactive. I think this is a good example of one of the few times we're actually proactive. We're saying in Wyoming, we don't want ranked choice voting, period. That, as I said, that fits with my members' policy, and discussing this with some of my counterparts in other states, they wish they didn't have it, especially up in Alaska. It doesn't work as well as what they had anticipated. They wish they didn't have it. There's other mechanisms that would be better to, come up with, if somebody doesn't get 50% of the vote. But one of their concerns is that, some of the candidates where there is ranked choice voting was, instead of just, ranking them all, just vote for me with the hopes that, well, that person would get a higher ranking, then, the ballots don't work. So, Mr. Chairman, committee sitting in favor of this bill, a good proactive bill. I would take any questions you or the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Moline. Any questions for Mr. Moline? Seeing none, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. We appreciate
And I don't mind the hard chairs.
Welcome to Appropriations. Please state your name and if you represent someone or what your position on this particular bill is as well.
Chairman Bear, members of the committee, my name's Era Arano. I'm with the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. Please indulge me a very brief background. Founded in 1907, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that represents family farmers in Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. We were founded to ensure that individuals in rural communities can compete effectively and fairly in the marketplace and are dedicated to achieving profitability for family farmers and ranchers and supporting our rural communities. Our policy positions are member-driven, with proposals originating from local chapters and then voted on both at a state and then a tri-state group. Our policy is clear on this issue. We support the use of ranked choice voting for voting systems for elections. Thank you. I stand for questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Arano? Arano. Is that, did I
Arano,
pronounce
yes,
it
sir.
Arano? Okay, sorry. All right, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate your input. Is there any other public comment on this bill? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Move the bill. Seconded by Representative Smith. All right, page 1. Page 2, any changes? Representative Sherwood, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And maybe if I read this out loud, it'll click with me, but I'm having a little bit of a trouble on page 2, lines 13, 14, and 15. Maybe there is an unintended consequence in this section. So it says, or any other system that allows a voter to vote for more than the number of candidates. And what came to mind was, on a paper ballot, sometimes people overvote, and it's not intentional, right? It's a mistake, and then essentially that gets thrown out. So if there is a race where I'm only supposed to vote for one person, but I make a mistake on my ballot and I vote for 2, does that mean that we can no longer use paper ballots under this language?
Okay. Do you have a motion, or just want to discuss that part of the language?
I'd like some feedback from my committee members on if I am misreading this, but I guess my motion would be to delete on line 13, after winners, put a period, and then delete the remaining section of that line through line 15.
Okay, you've heard the Sherwood motion. Is there a second? All right, seconded by Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to second it just so we can have a conversation on it. Mr. Chairman, I believe that there's always the potential for error, human error. I mean, so I think that this doesn't preclude, what they're saying is we can't sit there and say, so let's just say we're doing a special district of sorts that says vote for no more than 2. There's 2 positions, vote for no more than 2, and there's 7 names. If you voted for 3, obviously you're in breach of that. I don't believe that this would eliminate the ability to have that. I think that just goes back to someone didn't follow the directions. I don't think this eliminates their ability to follow directions. I don't think it eliminates our ability to have a paper ballot. But let's do this. Let's vote down this motion. And how about you and I work on it if it finds its way to the floor, and we'll make sure we'll talk to our clerks and the Secretary of State and make sure we have our ducks in a row. And if this is an issue, we'll take care of it.
I would also comment this, Representative Sherwood, that our current system really does not allow those overvotes or undervotes. They effectively throw out that vote if you fail to follow the directions. So I think the language actually works, because we currently don't have a system that does allow it, and this says that any system that would allow it is denied. So I think it's a point worth addressing, but I don't think this language hurts our current system. All right, any further discussion? All right, that was page 2. Page 3?
We have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. All those in favor of the Sherwood motion, seconded by Haroldson, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no?
No.
All right, that motion fails. All right, on to page 3. Any motions? All right, seeing none. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Interestingly enough, this last summer, my family and I went to Alaska for a vacation, visited some friends of the family up there. And it was interesting because one of the first conversations that hit was, whatever you do, do not allow your state to go to ranked choice voting. Is the worst thing, I won't say everything they said, it's the worst thing that could have ever happened to the election process. And so as we look at things, obviously our goal is always to make them better. And I think it's pretty obvious that ranked choice voting has proven not to be a better choice in the places where it's been brought in. I think the theory of it is good, but the application of it has proven to be very, very bad. So on and for this bill.
Okay. Any further discussion? I would like to make a comment on this bill. I do appreciate the bringing this bill, and I'll tell you why. I think, I'm going to invoke one of our prior presidents. President Reagan said that, we need to have bright colors when we're electing people, not pastels. And I think what the problem with ranked choice is it tends to get, the more you work to be in the middle and not standing for something, the more likely you're going to get elected in a ranked choice bill. And I think the secretary pointed out that many times someone who loses the first round ends up being the winner. And I think that's really problematic for this type of thing. So, and we did have a sample of that. It's not an official election that goes through the state, but at our university, their student government had a ranked choice electing, and we were able to watch it right here within the borders of Wyoming. And that very thing happened that I just described. So I am pretty excited about actually putting our foot down and saying this is not something we want in the state of Wyoming. So having said that, is there any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Childress, would you please take the roll?
Roll call vote on House Bill 165 do pass. Representative Allemand excused. Representative Angelos? Aye. Representative Haroldson?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood?
No.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 5 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
Okay, that passes. And Representative Webb, would you please manage that on the floor? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time here. All right, Representative Nicholas, would you please come forward and present House Bill 229 to us? High Plains Research Station and Arboretum Historic Site. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to House Appropriations. Your old stomping grounds.
So thank you for bringing this bill up. I meant to bring up copies of this Arboretum. It's basically Jessica here in the back wrote this. Oh, do you? There we are. We have the mayor here and some other folks.
And Ms. Fritz got me a copy. I went on a tour just yesterday.
I have 20.
Hold on to those. They may be in high demand.
So for those of you who were here last year, this isn't a new topic. In fact, we passed this out of the House. We almost passed it out of the House. We had 39 votes and we needed 40 to get it, the 2/3 to consider it. But just in a nutshell, the High Plains Arboretum is both a national and a state historic location here in Laramie County. And it's just it was, and I'm going to let Jessica and other folks kind of go through the history of it, and I'll let you, and I'll also let them talk about the costs and the issues of why the city of Cheyenne, who owns the 68 acres, frankly, doesn't have the wherewithal to continue the operations and the upkeep of this location. But for example, it spent roughly $783,000 last year working on this location, paving a road that goes in through it and to the Veterans Cemetery, which is the only national veteran cemetery in the state of Wyoming. They have a botanist and groundskeepers work and laborers for it. Their budget for 2025 is roughly $400,000. And I'll let the mayor and company talk about what that represents. And so this is basically the vision for this is a public-private partnership where this community and Laramie County, along with the city and along with the state through the state park process, basically through incremental phases, reconstitutes what was the Arboretum that was started by our good Senator Warren back in right around 1928. That's when it was originally funded through Congress. The purpose for it was to grow trees and shrubs and other plants on the high plains. Most of the windbreaks that you see in Wyoming that were planted between 1930 and 1970, those trees came from here. So we want to reestablish that ability to grow trees, to return the nurseries and the greenhouses back to, so they're fully operational, and turn it into a state park. So with that, I know that this committee decided to grab the $3.3 million that was in the budget. So I have a budget amendment that I'd like you to, that was sent over. What this budget amendment does, it takes $2.5 million out of the tourism reserve account and substitutes it for, and then it changes the last paragraph. And it does two things. It takes $2.5 million out of the tourism account so that there is absolutely no fiscal impact to the state through by creating this state park. The other thing it does, it requires an ongoing obligation by the city of no less than $300,000 in cash or services that will be matched for whatever dollars we put in. And so what the city currently projects is they're going to hire a full-time botanist. They're going to have 2 part-time seasonal employees. They're going to have 1 full-time seasonal intern, an urban forestry staff member, and volunteer hours of roughly, and all those values add up. That's that $400,000 that I talked about earlier. So that's their commitment. But what we're saying in the statute is that needs to be an ongoing commitment from the city in order to make this operational. So what we're doing is and then obviously there's a foundation that through the Botanic Gardens we'll end up creating a nonprofit foundation just for the Arboretum and begin fundraisers to basically begin out paying for ongoing operations as well as endowments into the future so that it's a full community commitment. So that's the plan. And so what I'd like to turn it over to the folks that want to talk, and then I can kind of wrap it up in the end.
Okay, we'll do that. All right. I assume we'd like to have Ms. Fritz come forward?
You bet.
Please. Mayor, you're welcome to come forward too. Just go ahead and grab a seat so you can go to you after Ms. Fritz. Welcome to Appropriations. Appreciate you both being here. And thank you again for the tour you provided yesterday.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us here today, Chairman Bear and House Appropriations Committee. Thank you for considering this bill. This, I'd actually planned to have my comments after the mayor's comments, so would it be all right if
That's
I let
fine.
the mayor speak first?
Sure,
Yeah.
that's fine. Go ahead, Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for having us here today. I'm Mayor Patrick Collins from the city of Cheyenne. I was reading the State Parks website the other day, and I found one of their goals of state parks is to preserve, conserve, and restore Wyoming's history and prehistory. And the Highway Plains Arboretum is an example of a place with an amazing story and a place worthy of preserving, conserving, and restoring to ensure our state and its residents can explore and experience its history for years to come. I'd like you to think back to the early 1900s. There were very few trees on the plains in our state, with less than 200,000 people, and Cheyenne being the largest city of 13,000 people. The USDA recognized this problem, and they created the High Plains Arboretum. They sent plant explorers around the world to find trees that were growing in conditions similar to the arid, cold, and windy conditions we have here in the High Plains. And I marvel at the challenges they faced. There was no air travel. They were on slow boats to China and Siberia and places like that to find plants that would solve our High Plains frustrations. The plant material they brought back from around the world was tested, and the ones that thrived were propagated at the Arboretum and shared with the Rocky Mountain West. That research, as the good representative talked earlier, created today's windbreaks surrounding our farms and our ranches, our rural residential windbreaks, and our urban forests in our cities and towns, and I would contend had a heck of an impact on our quality of life. Today, when we want fruits or vegetables, we head to the store or supermarket. But those retail options weren't available in many of our communities in the early 1900s. Folks grew their own and canned them to last throughout the year. But the problem was many of the common plants grown in other areas took too long to grow and mature than our growing season allowed. The High Plains Arboretum worked to find and propagate fruit, vegetables, flowers, and shrubs to solve that vegetable challenge our residents faced. Today, over 600 of the historic trees remain. The site has historic buildings designed by famed Wyoming architect William Du Bois that are approaching 100 years old. And during the Depression years, 2 different civilian conservation corps camps were housed on the site, and their labors can be viewed with the beautiful stone terraces, bridges, and buildings that were used in operation of the Arboretum. So today we're asking that the Arboretum become a state historic site. State Parks is uniquely qualified to successfully manage this site and the partnerships. The City of Cheyenne, our Board of Public Utilities, the Botanic Gardens, Forestry, Community Recreation and Parks, Laramie County Conservation District, Friends of the Botanic Gardens, State Forestry, and others are committed to this partnership with the state to make the site successful. This partnership contributed about $800,000 to the Arboretum last year and is poised to contribute at least around $400,000 annually moving forward. One additional component that I'm really excited about is the restoration of the historic greenhouse to begin growing trees on the Arboretum again. Our city plants about 1,000 trees a year, but the Arboretum has a capacity to plant 40 to 50,000 seedlings a year. The Arboretum could help the State Forestry Department with much needed stock to reforest areas decimated by fires. Another potential impact of this partnership that I think would be very helpful. Mr. Chairman and the committee, I appreciate the mission you have begun to bring the state's budget under control. I hope the mission will find room to preserve, conserve, and restore the High Plains Arboretum to forever save it and the amazing history it has for our residents. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Mayor Collins, any questions for Mayor Collins? Okay. Ms. Fritz, if you'd proceed, please.
Thank you, Chairman Bear. So I am Jessica Fries. I'm a horticulturist at the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens, and I work for the city of Cheyenne and help care for the High Plains Arboretum on a part-time. I spend part of my time out at the High Plains Arboretum. I also have done a lot of research on the Arboretum over the past few years and wrote the book that was distributed to you. So I just wanted to add a few points to the important information that Mayor Collins already provided. I don't know if you all have noticed, but it's not very easy to grow trees in Wyoming. And the climate here throws almost every possible challenge at them. We don't have much precipitation. We have long stretches of drought, our high altitude, frequent wind, long winters, late and early frosts, and frequent hailstorms all combine to make it very difficult to grow trees in this climate. So this is why a historic arboretum in Wyoming is such a special thing to have. We do have a few other arboretums around the state at various levels of development, but I think people are beginning to, people have always valued trees and wanted to get them established in our state, but it's not always very easy. So I also wanted to talk about why this arboretum, or what this arboretum and station have contributed to our entire state, not just Cheyenne, and what we could contribute in the future. So Chairman Bear and Representative Angelos, the Camplex Park in Gillette, recently added an orchard to their collection a few years ago. And that orchard contains fruit trees that were tested and found to be appropriate for the High Plains in our, at our research station. I'll just clarify quickly. Sometimes I'll say research station and sometimes I'll say arboretum. The arboretum is a portion of the horticultural research station that specifically tested trees and shrubs. So sometimes when I'm referring to research station, I'm talking about the horticultural research that happened between 1930 and 1974, whereas the arboretum was just a certain portion of that. And the arboretum is also the portion of the station that is currently controlled by the city of Cheyenne. The proposed state historic site would encompass the arboretum and a part of that research station, which is still used by the USDA for grasslands research. So on that note of statewide contributions, Representative Pendergraft shared and received trees from the research station in the past, and the Kendrick Arboretum actually just reached out to me this week wanting to collaborate on adding some of our especially tough trees at the High Plains Arboretum to their collection to help them achieve level 2 accreditation as an arboretum. Representative Alleman's not here, but the Agricultural Resource and Learning Center in Gardens in Casper also include trees and shrubs that were tested and made available to the nursery trade by the research station. Representative Smith, plants and research were shared between the Cheyenne Station and the CCC camp and experimental farm in Torrington. In the days when those were both conducting research, there was actually a lot of collaboration between the scientists here and the researchers there. Representative Sherwood, trees from the research station were planted on the University of Wyoming campus that are still standing and gracing those grounds today. I've also collaborated with the groundskeepers at the University of Wyoming in the last year on helping them with their grounds efforts, and they've shared some of their historic plants with me for our collection here at the Arboretum as well. Representative Haroldson, landowners in your district received trees for their personal shelter belts on private land that were grown and distributed from the research station in the past. So as you can see, this doesn't just benefit Cheyenne. These trees were distributed around the state. Many of them are in your own backyards. And our vision for starting this nursery again would be to continue that practice of providing Wyoming trees across the state. The strong ties to agriculture also cannot be ignored since 1975, when the focus of research changed from horticultural research to grasslands research. The USDA has been conducting experiments on the effects of grazing on our shortgrass prairie. They've also, which has helped ranchers manage their land to maximize livestock gain and care for their grasses. Current research involves the use of new technologies to help control invasive weeds like cheatgrass through selective grazing. The site also has strong ties to veterans. Many trees were given to the VA hospital here in Cheyenne, which still stand today on that property. A Veterans Civilian Conservation Corps camp provided job training and work to unemployed veterans from 1935 to 1942. This project would preserve the buildings, infrastructure, and stonework that were built by the Veterans CCC camp. In 2020, the only national veterans cemetery in the state of Wyoming was opened on the property, like Representative Nicholas mentioned. They manage their 5 acres for the cemetery, but everything surrounding it, including space for parking, the road that we already mentioned, the city paved this year, and also just the surrounding ambiance of the cemetery would all be preserved and improved with this historic site project. So we're also benefiting the family and friends who are visiting their lost veterans there in the cemetery with this project. So Mayor Collins and Representative Nicholas mentioned returning to the original mission of the statement by restoring the greenhouse and growing trees again. And I also just want to elaborate on why this is so important. Forests are not regenerating on their own in the recent wildfires that we've had in the last 10 years. It used to be that fires would burn through and forests would regenerate, and a few years later you'd see new seedlings, but that's not happening anymore because these more recent fires have been burning much hotter and are much more devastating than what has happened in the past. And so what they're noticing is that if we want our forests to regenerate after wildfires, those trees have to be planted. And another thing they've noticed, South Dakota actually had trouble with this in their forests. If you take trees, for example, ponderosa pine is a tree that's native to many forests throughout this region, even all the way to Oregon and Washington. And a lot of the ponderosa pines that come from nurseries are grown in Oregon and Washington because they have mild climates with lots of rainfall, and it's easy to grow trees quickly there. But what they found out is if you take ponderosa pines that came from seeds in Oregon and Washington and plant them in South Dakota, they weren't thriving. And if you think about what a seed has gone through that's in our forests here in Wyoming, that seed is formed with the genetic information from generations of trees that have survived in this very climate. And those trees that have thrived in this very climate are the ones that are the most likely to grow and prosper and produce seeds. So when we're collecting seeds from our forests in this area, growing them and then replanting them in those forests, that's where we're going to have the best chance of success in saving our state forests. So that's, there are many reasons to support this project. It's a very exciting, it's very exciting what we can contribute in the future, as well as a historical gem that we really believe is worth preserving. So I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Freeze. Any questions for Ms. Freeze? Go ahead, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I missed it yesterday. I really wanted to be there. I'm still trying to recover from the stuff that decided to rattle through the House. But so as I look at this, I almost see this as two things. So we have a research station, and then we have a historic site. And I think that, I mean, I definitely hear what you're saying. I love the quote you put in here. It's one I use regularly. Best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago or today. I also understand that stuff I get from the nurseries don't grow near as good as the stuff I get off of my buddy's land on the mountain and make sure it's still facing the same direction when you plant it, type of deal. So I understand the research required. I understand my mom's got a background in horticulture and greenhouse management. This is my world. I grew up with this. I didn't know there was anything but this. The struggle that I have is as we look at the financial burden of restoring the historic side of this, is there an ROI on that? And can you speak to that a little bit? Because that's where I guess I'm struggling. Not so much on the research part, but on that restoration of the historic side. And can we get people, how do we funnel people through here to make this worth our while and not just a burden on our state parks?
Ms. Freeze?
Thank you, Chairman Bear, and Representative Harrelson. Thank you for the questions and the comments. Yes, there is some opportunity for returns on investment through this project. The trees that are grown in the nursery and distributed would be paid for by the entities that use them. So currently our local conservation districts and our state forestry purchase trees for their efforts through other nurseries in surrounding states. So that money that they're spending right now out of state would be used to purchase the state and help pay for the cost of growing those trees. Now, growing trees, full disclosure, growing trees is not a highly profitable business. Otherwise, you see lots of for-profit nurseries around us. And so it could help pay for, some supplies and some part-time positions. It's not going to completely fund the site. There are other opportunities for income with some restoration of the historic buildings on the site. There are currently 5 historic houses that the USDA no longer uses that would be included in the state historic site, which with the restoration of those buildings, there's the potential for event rentals, possible overnight rentals like have been done in other state parks in the region. So there is the opportunity, and we already actually do offer the Arboretum for event rental space, for outdoor spaces. We don't have an indoor facility. So there is some, revenue that can be generated through event rentals. We also already, our main fundraiser for the Arboretum is an annual plant sale where we, make these plants that have been tested at the Arboretum available to the public. So that's through the Friends of the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens. That's our main source of revenue for the Arboretum right now. So there are some opportunities to generate revenue through the site. Again, it's not going to fully fund the site, but would help offset those costs. And, I think when you think about the benefits that you can't put a number on, of being able to provide trees that will actually do better in our state, when you consider the cost for municipalities and homeowners to replace trees that don't thrive here, you know, there's that's a cost that's hard to put a number on, but it would definitely be a benefit of growing these Wyoming trees for use in Wyoming.
Ms. Angelos. Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. I've toured this last summer, I believe it was, and I do have a question. The old water tower that was a part of the area, is that included in this?
Ms. Freeze.
Chairman Barrett, yes, Representative Angelos, so the proposed state historic site is 877 acres. That would include all of the buildings on the site, which would include the historic water treatment plant and the valve house. So the yellow building on the top of the hill was the water treatment facility. It's no longer used by the city of Cheyenne. They do still use the pink building, the valve house, to direct water into the city of Cheyenne. So that would still be managed by the Board of Public Utilities. But the site would incorporate those buildings. Right now, there's not a plan as to what might happen with those buildings, but they would be included in the footprint of the site.
Follow-up?
Follow-up, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would the plan be to reclaim that water tower? The water tank, the holding tank, is there a plan to reclaim that?
Ms. Freeze.
Chairman Bear, so Representative Angelos, the water is still, so there is a reservoir behind the water tower that is still being used. The Board of Public Utilities runs water into that reservoir from North Crow Reservoir in the spring when the reservoir gets too full from spring runoff. So they still do run water into it, and that's what we use for our flood irrigation system to water the Arboretum. So that would continue. There is, if I understand correctly, I think there is still some water that goes through that actually goes to the buildings on the site, so that would continue. But like I said, as far as the water treatment plant itself that's not being used anymore, that would be included, but there hasn't been a lot of discussion as to what the exact plan would be for it yet.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I watched this summer as 100,000 acre swath burned from the Montana line virtually all the way down to Bighorn. It is an awesome sight to see that much timber suddenly gone. I literally grew up in the Bighorns, and I can take you to fire site after fire site that started from the 40s on all the way through. And in virtually every one of them, including a very large one that burned up a number of acres about a dozen years ago, there are new little trees everywhere. So I wanted to push back a little bit on your description, but I want to make sure, are you suggesting, and if so, how so, that a facility the size of yours can have a meaningful help to a disaster this large?
Ms. Freeze.
Chairman Bear, Representative Pendergraft, yes, thank you for the question. And you're right, fire is actually a natural part of forest ecology on this half of the United States. And so, especially in areas where you have high lodgepole pine populations, they do tend to regenerate after fire. What I'm referring to is some of the most recent fires that have happened in Colorado. They've noticed that those are not regenerating like they used to. And so they're noticing with some of these more recent fires, they do burn hot enough to, it used to be that the seeds would just be kind of, sparked by the heat of a fire, so then they would actually be more likely to germinate after a fire. But they're noticing with some of these more recent wildfires that are burning much hotter, that it's getting hot enough to actually destroy the seeds rather than just simply give them the heat needed to break dormancy and germinate. So it's the more, and it's still too early to tell, for last year's fire, exactly what will happen with those. But this is just a trend that's been noticed around the region, and that's why a lot of our state foresters are concerned. You're correct that we don't have the capacity alone in the current greenhouse to completely reforest the area that was burned last year. Mayor Collins mentioned we have the capacity in the greenhouse as it now stands to grow 40 to 50,000 seedling trees. That's not going to reforest the entire area that was burned last year. But that's also, you got to remember that human beings have to plant each little seedling. And so, any reforestation effort is going to happen over a period of years. So by, growing these seeds from those Wyoming forests so that we can have a supply of trees to aid those reforestation efforts over years, we can bring those forests back. It would not be enough to do, all in 1 year. And the state forestry does already have a program where they collect seeds from the state forests with the help of state inmates. So they already have a stock of these seeds, but they do have difficulty finding nurseries who can grow them for them. So this would be one more step in that process to help them get a hold of these trees.
Further questions from Ms. Fries? Thank you. Thank you very much for being here, and we
Thank
appreciate
you.
your passion for this. Further comments from the public? And Representative Nicholas, I'd like you to come forward too, because I have a question for you. You were wanting to wrap things up. We'll have you do that here before we get into the rest of public comment. You can come forward, please, sir. Anyone else, agencies? Everybody come on forward if you would, please. Representative Nicholas, if there's anything you'd like to add at this point, I'd appreciate it if you just go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to ask you a quick question about your amendment.
I think the primary thing that is how unique this proposition is, right? What other state park has the local community contribute money, time, and effort to it? It's just unique in that sense. And that just shows you the desire to make this thing work. Right now, basically, with the amendment, this doesn't cost anything to our state coffers other than from the tourism reserve account. The tourism reserve account was always kind of an issue with me because we didn't really control it. The tourism board was reserving it. And so, in fact, I would suggest that we can probably make a permanent contribution of several $100,000 a year out of that account on an ongoing basis, in addition to just the $2 million. To help carry this forward so that it's never going to be a substantial financial burden for the state. But that being said, that's what state government does. It takes a unique situation and makes it better for the people of Wyoming. And right now we're in trying financial times, and we all understand that. And that's why the uniqueness of this is, at least for now, it won't cost anything. If we can get the park up and running, I've seen the original master plan back in 2003 and state parks evaluation on the certain dollars and cents. It was never intended that we were going to actually make an appropriation for $15 or $20 million for this project. It's going to be project by project, step by step, through the efforts of the community and fundraisers and other things that we can do. So that will be unique for the state of Wyoming, and I just think that's a better practice where everyone's got skin in the game and everyone does their best to make this come to fruition.
Thank you for that, Representative Nicholas. Quickly, before I get into the amendment that you proposed, can you just tell us, for the sake of the public, what is the act of making something a state historic site? What is the effect of that? Okay, all right. We'll do that. All right, then we'll go back to your amendment. You have stated here on line 33 that you want this to be part of the standard budget. And so, and you've also stated that this last part, this page 5, line 20 through the end, that this is supposed to be matching funds in this ongoing way, but you say up to or not less than $300,000. So this being, the second half of the biennium, is it intended that that when they come for the budget, that would be $600,000? And what is that would assume a one-to-one match, but we don't have any kind of determination here as far as what kind of match that would be. What is your intention for the match?
So the answer to that, Mr. Chairman, is that your first statement, the ongoing dollars, I don't know, I don't think that was in the bill if it wasn't ever intended to be.
Okay.
These were always intended to be one-time dollars. And then, so then the ongoing dollars would be obligation would be if the state contributes extra money, then that the city has to come up with for $300,000. That's what's ongoing about this, if it's a state park.
Okay.
So that they will be funding those fundamental operations and theoretically, using it as they saw fit.
Okay. All right. Director, welcome to House Appropriations. Appreciate you being here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Dave Glenn, Director of Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources. And with me is Deputy Director Nick Nealon and our planner, Carly Ann Carruthers. She's our head of our planning department. They've been working on this project for a couple of years, and I'll just punt it right over to Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Nick Nealon, Deputy Director, State Parks and Cultural Resources. I'd like to start off by saying that this would certainly make an excellent addition to our system. We believe, as was previously stated, that it's an important site both locally, statewide, and nationally. Our concerns along the way have only been about receiving the resources necessary to properly run the site as a state historic site, staffing and operational dollars. If you'd like to move to the question about how something becomes a historic site, I can ask Carly Ann Carruthers to take that on. She's the one who headed up that process for us.
I'm not that interested in the process, just interested in I want the public to understand what is the result of us changing that from not being a historical site to being an official historic site? What are the ramifications of that change?
Mr. Chairman, being part of our system, I think the change is that the state would be responsible for it instead of the city of Cheyenne, and we would be responsible for staffing and operating the site. That's the primary change.
Thank you. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good seeing you guys. Site criteria review. How did it score? Do we have the number for that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, I'm going to ask Carly Ann to answer that since she headed up the process for us.
Thank you.
Ms. Ann, please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, our site criteria process is outlined under statute 364106E, just in case you need reference. We completed this in July 2023 with a fairly comprehensive evaluation team, and it scored as on the high end of our moderate priority, with reservations towards what we're speaking to now of understanding that we would need funding, proper partnerships in place, and wanting to do it correctly.
And I know that there was a study, Director Glenn, that was conducted with the first funds that were provided. Can you speak to the outcome of that study, you or your staff here?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, of the original $3.5 million that was appropriated last year, we spent $161,244 on a facility condition assessment. And that study took a look at the existing facilities and told us what we would need to put in deferred maintenance and in rehabilitation costs. And these are things like stabilization, mitigation efforts, lead and asbestos, site accessibility, and other infrastructure such as parking lots, a restroom, and some significant water and sewer improvements. The deferred maintenance cost from the study was just a little over 7.7 million, and the rehabilitation costs were roughly 11.2 million, for a total of just shy of $19 million. And as Representative Nicholas stated earlier, there's no reason that we could not take on those projects in a phased manner, doing them over time.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Director, do you have an idea of how, with just 2.5 million, like what is the plan and how would you utilize 2.5 million? Obviously, we're looking at almost $20 million in restoration, so what would that look like? And where would you start?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Angelos, we've discussed this at length amongst each other on staff, and I think the belief is that the greenhouse would be the first place that we would start on some of these projects. To get the site back up and actively running in the way that Ms. Free has described, the greenhouse would have to be the first rehabilitation project. There are a couple buildings that are in danger of some structural failure, and we would address those as well.
Follow-up? Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Director, do you feel 2.5 million is going to get the greenhouse up and running?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Angelos, I'm going to ask Carly Ann for the exact numbers on the greenhouse rehabilitation.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Angelos, I do not have the exact figure, but the complex that encompasses the head house, which is the front part of the greenhouse portion, and then even potentially the lath house, which is sort of the in-between outdoor-indoor growing space, I believe off the top of my head should be covered under the deferred maintenance category. We'll follow up with the official number, but yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Angelos, without having the study in front of me, I can't give you the exact number, but we do have that in this study.
Further questions for the agency? All right, thank you all for being here. Go ahead, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Are we, what type of flow of people through this do you think? So this is the interesting part. I mean, there hasn't been in the past. I mean, its location is not ideal for people that are wanting to come and see it. And the reason I say that is because prior to having it hit the scene, it was pretty much unknown. And I'm not saying we can't shift or change that. If you made it into a historic site, that will shift and change that. But one of the concerns is, do we go through this process, go through this work, and then find ourselves at a point where we have a facility that is not being used or utilized by the public? Is that a concern?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, we, as part of the site criteria process, we did a study, looked at other arboretums around the country and compared it to some of our other historic sites. And we're guessing somewhere between 10 and 12,000 visitors a year would use the site initially. And of course, we would hope to grow that number through some of these community partnerships and interpretive programs that we would put on at the site. And I think locally, the site has been known fairly well. A lot of folks in Cheyenne use it, but statewide, you may be correct.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Much appreciated. Ma'am, welcome to Appropriations. Would you please state your name and who you represent, how you stand on this bill?
My name is Megan Stanfill. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Historic Wyoming. We work with communities statewide to advocate for the preservation of Wyoming's historic places and spaces. The High Plains Research Station and Arboretum is currently listed on our watch list of threatened places, signifying the critical need of preservation efforts at the site. For some context, over the past 3 years, we've worked with Jessica and the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens to host multiple tours of the historic structures at the site. We've attracted hundreds of attendees who are interested in the stories these buildings hold and the potential of the site's future. Our attendees come from the local and statewide community, with some traveling as far as Bighorn and Campbell counties just to get a glimpse into the past. The site is more than just old buildings and trees. It's a testament to the ingenuity and resiliency of those who came before us to live, survive, and thrive in our unique climate. Many of the buildings at the site were designed by renowned architect William Du Bois, who also designed the Senate and House wings in this building. The plant varieties and research developed at the site have contributed to the longevity of our communities. These stories deserve to be heard. Preservation depends on connecting the past to the present. The site's creation supported our veterans. Construction and infrastructure of the site was completed through labor of a veterans camp of the Civilian Conservation Corps. Their work has stood the test of time, and I find it fitting that a portion of the site has returned to our service members as their eternal resting place. The Veterans Cemetery has increased visitation and awareness of the site, making now a critical point for the retention of the site's historic integrity. I would like to reiterate that the project is a strategic partnership that requires investment by multiple partners. As a longstanding partner of this project, the Alliance for Historic Wyoming hopes that you can see the value of this place to all citizens of the state of Wyoming. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Any questions? All right. Thank you again for coming and sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to comment on this bill? Representative Storer, would you like to opine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Storer. I used to live in Cheyenne, so I got to know this property about 25 years ago. And I know that this effort has been going on for almost since then, for the last couple of decades, to try to figure out, what this project can look like moving forward, how to bring the partners together. And I really want to compliment all the folks that have worked on this. I know also the history of the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens here, and what a kind of an amazing project it was to build that facility, and how much both public and private funding had to do and came together to make that happen. And I think similarly, we can do the same thing here for the Arboretum. I'm encouraged by the enthusiasm we got to experience yesterday, Mr. Chairman, and just touring it. And I enjoyed, I appreciated you coming out. And I would just encourage all of you to consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Representative Storer? All right. Thank you again for being here. Appreciate you. All right. Is there any other public comment? Welcome. Please state your name and your stance on this bill, where you're from.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Phyllis Salzberg. I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm just here as a citizen to speak in favor of this bill. I've really become very fond of this location. I've been out there a number of times. I've taken family and friends that have come to visit me, taken them out there to see this site. I've listened to Jessica speak many times about the benefits of this site, and I won't even try to say what she has said, but I do strongly support what the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens and the city of Cheyenne has done and would like to do out there. As a historic site, I think it's vital that we try and preserve this. An educational venue for children and others that would come to our community, and hope to learn more about what we have done here in Cheyenne to benefit the agricultural community throughout our state, region, and nation. I'm also, I'll mention this, I'm a member of the General Federation of Women's Clubs. We have passed a resolution recently supporting this project. We have over 400 members, many from your communities around the state, that are also in favor of this project. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that service. Any questions from Ms. Salzberg? All right. Thank you very much for being here today. All right. Any other public comment? Ms. Childress, do we have anyone online for this? All right. All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Move the bill. Seconded by Representative Harrelson. All right. We'll start on page 1. Any motions? Representative Harrelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we bring in the proposed amendment that spans page 1 and 5, and changes that appropriation from 3.338 million down to the 2.5 million.
So seconded by Sherwood. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of Representative Harrelson's motion to move Representative Nicholas's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. Okay, that carries. All right, going on, page 2, any motions? Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. And page 6. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Angelos.
20, did we add the second part, or did we completely add this entire amendment?
The entire amendment.
Yes. Where the, page 5, line 20, after act, insert the master plan required by sections 1 and 2. On the part where the city of Cheyenne is financially responsible for some of this. I'd like to add that in.
I think it's.
Did we add it? Did you add the whole thing? All right, never mind then.
Yep. Okay. Any further comments on the bill? All right, seeing none. Ms. Childers, would you please take the roll?
Roll call vote, House Bill 229 do pass with amendments. Representative Allemand excused. Representative Angelos. Aye. Representative Harrelson.
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft.
No.
Representative Sherwood.
Aye.
Representative Smith.
No.
Chairman Bear.
No.
Mr. Chairman, 3 aye, 3 no, 1 excused.
Okay, all right, we've dispatched with that bill. That'll remain in this committee as a do pass fail. And thank you everyone for being here. Appreciate all your input. Okay. And we're going to adjourn now. We'll take up 292 tomorrow morning with some other bills, all right?